The moment he stepped out of the taxi, every head turned, and not in admiration, but in quiet confusion. Weddings were meant for couples, for laughter that came in pairs, for hands that found each other without thinking. Yet there he was, standing alone under bright midday sun, holding a small girl's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. His suit was simple, slightly wore at the edges, but clean. His eyes carried a weight that no celebration could hide. And as the distant music drifted through the open garden, something about his presence felt like a story no one had asked to hear until it was too late to look away. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that life sometimes offers when we least expect them, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. Because stories like this remind us that even the most broken paths can lead to something beautiful. His name was Arman Kadir, and 5 years earlier, his life had shattered in a way that left no room for repair. He had once been a man who laughed easily, who believed that hard work and love were enough to build a future. He had married young, built a small home with his own hands, and welcomed a daughter into the world with trembling joy. But life, as it often does, had rewritten his story without asking for permission. A sudden illness had taken his wife in a matter of months, leaving behind silence so loud it echoed in every corner of his home. In that silence, Arman became both father and mother to little Meher, who was too young to understand why the warmth in their home had turned into something hollow. Days blurred into nights, and nights stretched endlessly into mornings. Arman worked double shifts at a modest workshop, fixing machines that never broke as completely as his own heart had. He learned how to braid his daughter's hair from online videos, how to pack school lunches with shaky hands, how to smile even when his chest felt like it was collapsing inward. He became everything Meher needed, even when he felt like he was barely holding himself together. The invitation to the wedding had arrived unexpectedly, tucked between bills and advertisements. It was from someone he had not seen in years, his cousin Ferris, who had once been like a brother to him. Time and distance had drifted them apart, but the invitation carried a note written in careful handwriting, asking him to come, to be there, to not disappear entirely from the world. For days, Arman had debated whether to go. Weddings felt like reminders of everything he had lost. But Meher, with her wide, curious eyes, had insisted. She wanted to see a bride in a white dress, to hear music, to watch people dance. And so, for her, he said yes. The wedding was held in a sunlit garden, where white chairs lined a long aisle scattered with rose petals. Laughter floated in the air, mingling with the scent of fresh flowers and polished wood. Guests wore bright colors, their voices rising and falling like waves. Arman felt out of place the moment he stepped in. He could sense the glances, the quiet whispers. A single man with a child at a wedding. It wasn't unusual, but it wasn't common either. And there was something about the way he carried himself, like a man who had forgotten how to belong anywhere. Meher clung to his hand at first, her small fingers curling tightly around his. But slowly, as children always do, she began to drift toward the other kids, drawn by laughter and games. Arman watched her carefully, a faint smile forming despite himself. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. For a moment, the weight lifted just enough for him to feel something other than grief. The ceremony began under a canopy of soft white fabric, swaying gently in the breeze. The bride walked down the aisle, radiant and glowing, her eyes fixed on a man waiting for her at the end. It was a beautiful sight, the kind that made people believe in forever. Arman looked away, not because he didn't appreciate it, but because it reminded him too much of a promise that had been broken by fate. As the vows were exchanged, as applause filled the air, Arman felt something shift within him. Not hope, not yet, but something close to it. Maybe it was the sunlight, or the way Meher laughed in the distance, or the simple fact that he had stepped outside his grief for a few hours. Whatever it was, it made him stay. The reception followed, filled with music, clinking glasses, and endless conversations. Arman stood near the edge of the crowd, watching more than participating. He had never been good at pretending everything was fine, but he stayed for Meher, who now ran freely with the other children, her laughter ringing like a bell. And then, just as the music softened and someone raised a toast, something unexpected happened. A chair scraped loudly against the ground. The sound cut to the chatter like a blade, drawing every eye in the garden. A woman stood up from one of the tables, her movements deliberate, her expression unreadable. She was not part of the bridal party, nor someone Armin recognized. Yet there was something about the way she stood, steady, unwavering, that commanded attention. Her voice, when she spoke, carried across the garden with quiet strength. She did not shout, but every word seemed to find its way into every ear. "Look at me." The words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. Conversations died instantly. Even the music seemed to fade into silence. The woman's gaze moved across the crowd until it settled on Armin, and in that moment, it felt as though the entire world had narrowed down to a single point. Armin felt his chest tighten. He didn't understand what was happening, why she was looking at him, why everyone else was now turning to follow her gaze. For a second, he considered leaving, slipping away quietly before whatever this was unfolded. But his feet refused to move. The woman took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. There was something in them, something familiar, something that stirred a memory buried deep beneath years of pain and exhaustion. Armin searched his mind, trying to place her, but the answer eluded him. Time seemed to slow, stretching each second into something almost unbearable. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now, but no less steady. "You don't recognize me, do you?" The question wasn't accusing. It wasn't angry. It was something else entirely, something that carried the weight of years and the echo of a story unfinished. Armin shook his head slightly, confusion clouding his thoughts. The crowd remained silent, watching, waiting, as if they were witnessing something they didn't yet understand but couldn't look away from. The woman smiled faintly, though there was sadness in it. She took another step closer, closing the distance between them, until she stood just a few feet away. And then, in a voice that trembled just enough to reveal the emotion beneath her composure, she said something that changed everything. "You once saved my life, and you forgot me." The word struck Armin like a sudden storm. Memories he hadn't thought about in years began to surface. Fragments at first, then clearer, sharper. A rainy evening, a roadside accident, a young woman trapped in a car, terrified and bleeding. He had been driving home from work when he saw the crash. Without thinking, he had stopped, pulled her out, stayed with her until help arrived. He had never known what happened to her afterward. Life had moved on, dragging him with it. And now, here she was, standing in front of him, alive. The realization left him breathless. He stared at her, really seeing her for the first time, and something clicked into place. The shape of her eyes, the way her voice carried. He remembered. The crowd began to murmur softly, but their voices felt distant, like background noise in a moment that belonged only to the two of them. The woman's expression softened further, and for a moment, it seemed as though the entire world had paused just to let this moment exist. Near the edge of the garden, Meher watched, her small face filled with curiosity and something like hope. She didn't understand the past that was unfolding in front of her, but she could feel that it mattered. And as Armin stood there, caught between who he had been and who he had become, something inside him began to shift in a way he hadn't felt in years. Before this story reaches its end, take a moment to tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment where the past suddenly came back and changed everything? Your stories matter, and they might inspire someone else who needs it. The woman extended her hand, not as a stranger, but as someone who carried a piece of his forgotten kindness. And for the first time in a long time, Armin didn't feel alone in the crowd. He felt seen, in that bright, sunlit garden. Surrounded by strangers and memories, something new began to take root. A quiet, fragile hope that maybe life wasn't finished with him yet. That maybe, even after loss and loneliness, there were still stories waiting to unfold. And as he reached out to take her hand, the music slowly returned, softer this time, as if it understood that something far more important had just begun.